was channeling the Seiko Shori Kai. The Kai was developed for the preservation of the teachings of the late James Mitose. What you're going to see in this tape is we're going to deal with, in Keys 5, we're going to deal with concepts and theories pertaining to the octagon. You've got to try to hang on to this tape, however, because at certain points in time it might become confusing. We're going to deal with the octagon, but we're going to deal with it where we place the octagon on the body, also on various points of the extremity, and how replacement of the body in dealing with the octagon and dealing with it on our opponent is going to might change your whole perspective on the way that you view things, or it might even reinforce what you're doing. Hope you enjoy the tape. Watch. Okay, the octagon. In the last tape, which was Keys 4, you got to see how we use a caging principle, meaning how to encompass a man's movement or motion. This particular tape is going to deal with the octagon now. We shorten it, or we make it larger or smaller. This in relationship at the angle that we position it, and where we understand where our centers are, might give you a whole new way of viewing throwing, striking, and everything else that you do. Now, what we have to keep in mind at all times, and I'm going to try to do this through an example, is we have to remember that if we take the octagon itself, and where our center is directed here, that our center directs the rotation of the octagon and the plane in which it turns, positions, or moves. That not only deals with the whole body mass, but deals with the extremity itself as well, such as the hand, the wrist, the elbow, the forearm, the knees, and every other part of the body. Now, if you can try to tune into this when you work and when you practice, you'll probably get a better understanding of movement and motion. Today in the martial arts, for instance, in Kempo alone, there is probably many different, well, there's about 200 styles of Kempo. What the biggest conflict between many of the Kempo styles deals with is how many moves they have within their curriculum. So what we're going to do is, instead of dealing with techniques, deal with the principles and concepts by themselves. The techniques will come. However, if you just dwell on techniques that's set within a rule or a system or a style, what you're going to do, you're going to build a kind of a situation where you'll never see the true meaning of principle. So what we're going to do is try and look at it from the opposite side now. The octagon, again, like I said, this is your center, which if you take myself, this is the center of the octagon. My pivot point is wherever my hand is or my upper body. If I place the octagon on the opponent, it will do the same thing. Now, if he is grabbing me or punching me, whatever part of my body that I allow to accept the incoming strike or the grab, that then is his center point. Now, we're going to start this off with explanation on how to deal with the basic positions themselves. We're going to deal with hand rotation and throwing first. Watch. Remember that your center is vital. It's very important. You never want to operate a technique out here or over here. Everything must always remain centered. This will relate to as an octagon. Now, however, the part of the body that he's going to grab is going to be this. This is basically a center. Now, this is my center, but let's say I increase that octagon to come all the way around. All right, now, if I can increase it through body positioning, and what I do is I step to this area of the octagon. So what I'm doing is I'm dealing from here to here. So what I do is I step to the outer side of that circle. Thusly, this creates a crease in the opponent. What he will do now is he's going to have to follow my centered movement. If I bring my hand in slowly, this is the center, and rotate it around and bring it back to center again, the opponent's going to go down. All movement and motion, no matter what you do, is if I take the center now, this is where the grab is. I bring the elbow in, I've created this. Now the center in this position is thus. Now I move to the outer circle of the octagon, or the center, which is actually my shoulder. You see this is what I've done. I've gone from here, brought this sphere of movement in. By doing so, I've rotated the octagon. It's here now. Now I slant slightly. From here, all I have to do is I go to the outer circle, which now what I've done is I've extended it from the shoulder to this shoulder. I step to this direction. Now all I have to do is maintain my center, because now what I do is I represent the center here. All I do is maintain the movement itself. The opponent's going to go down. When you're dealing with Kosho, remember, no matter how small you make your movement, that octagon is utilized in every single thing that you do. If the guy or the opponent, for instance, is here, again, he's got the grab. Here we have this and this. If I tilt this at this angle, and I bring my body to go like so, to keep my center here. From here I rotate, I'm going to flip that octagon. I come across, and now what I want to do is I want to step to the furthest point here. As I maintain the movement, the man will go. We're using this as an example mainly so that you can try to study the relationship of centers and movement. Also, the same identical principles would be utilized in your utilization of weaponry or anything else that you do. If you have this in this position, or you slant it slightly, or to the motion here, you've now increased your plane, but it's going like so. The opponent is standing straight up, and this continues. Then what this does, it guides him backward. Four directional folds does the same thing. The idea is what you want to do is maintain your centers as you're doing your movement or motion. Now, if my opponent is here in this position, we're going to take a grabbing movement now. Say if he pulls this back. If you look at where this is, what he's done by moving this, and as he's pulled down, if you notice how the octagon is slanted, I can do one of two things now. Again, I follow that motion. Either I can follow it in the same direction in movement, which is going to create off balance or a throw, grabbing this way, continuing the motion at this angle. Here's your plane. Man will go. We take the same exact thing. He grabs. As he pulls, we come to this direction. I take the octagon now this time and I bring the fan in to position. And you have another throw. Actually, working with a fan or working with a circular object is a good idea. This will give you good examples of how the octagon can move from just this position or this position. You elevate the angles. Now, how do you determine which way you're going to pull? If he's pulling me back this direction, this moves here. I step to this angle, the furthest corner, and I'm to the outside of the punch. So any of your motion or your movement that you make is going to change things. If the man's punching again, just follow the retracting side of the muscular structure, continue at this time, and cut straight down the body center. If you need power to do so, you just bend the knees, and you'll do so. So what you're doing is you're allowing your opponent's muscular structure or movement or retracting movement to change the direction or the plane of movement that you're taking. Use a flat object if you wish to work on. Any grab, Sensei. If he's here, now, here he's positioned this way. As he pulls back, 1, 2 position. I can step either direction. I can step inward, which creates a crease here. As he's in this position, I can create the crease here. So all you're doing now is you're just changing this. Now this again, your secondary motion, your opponent's going to whip their hand back. As he does so, all you got to do is go with this. Man's going to go. So on all your grabs and all your positions, the same thing takes place. Blocking maneuvers, the same thing. If he's here and he pulls in, this is where he's at. The extension is here. I always pull back or go with it. Never fight. Pull back, Sensei. If he's here, continue the motion. The man's down. What we'll do is we're going to take a series of different grabs in different ways of position. If I hold the octagon here or hold the circle this way, grab anything, Sensei. He grabs the other hand this time. Okay, again, here's the positions, here to here. What I do is he pulls in, I can use a palm of my hand the same way as I use this. So you can use this as a crutch if you wish. In this position, I have the man thrown here. All I have to do is maintain my center, and I move the body with it. If you maintain the center and the body stays with center, you're going to have your throws or your strikes or whatever else you want. Now, the same thing with punching maneuvers or blocking maneuvers. Depending on the elevation of the octagon and where you're going with it is going to change where you might strike. If he punches, I angle it here. I know that he's going to retract and punch again. I can either cut to the center, thusly, up, punch. I can move straight to the side, in position like so, punch. Moving across, now what I've done is I've gone this plane, punch. I come to this side. So no matter what you do with the octagon, if you start looking at this and take it slowly, you're going to get more out of it. Now, let's watch again. We're going to do some close-ups of this. Watch. I think the worst thing to do, or probably the most difficult thing to do, is to try to relate to what it is that we're doing in martial arts totally. We can get fixated on different subject matter. For instance, we can get fixated on a hand maneuver or an arm maneuver. But you have to understand how everything relates to everything else. I'm using this as a guideline to help you understand more about the octagon. And when we look at an octagon, we look at it here. However, we looked at it from another angle, it would look totally different, or another position. When we talk about evasiveness, we're placing the octagon on the body, which gives us understanding of evasiveness and escaping. Then we learn to place it on the body, which tells us about not only how to deal with the meridians, but also on how to utilize our striking arts. However, very seldom do we take the octagon and look at it downward and see the positions that it takes place here. This is another way of looking at it. Then if we take it at another slight angle, or a slight angle, and we center it here. These are all differences. The octagon is a symbol or a pattern that's been used by many different art forms or styles because it makes sense. Now, the problem is what we have to do as people, we have to stop ourselves and think about how far in depth that we've actually viewed something. So as I'm doing on this tape, it is very, very difficult to explain all of the various different things that you can see out of it. One thing, do not be satisfied with what you view in this tape. Do not think that all of the answers that you're going to discover over time comes from this. At the same time, make sure that you understand that there's more learning to go on, way beyond what you're going to see in these tapes or anything else. What I wanted to do is break things down for you, this time without a retracting side of the body. But I'm going to have, again, the octagon now, this is what's been accepted, this point here, with my center. Now, if I was standing here, my center is actually at my elbow point. So my extension of the octagon is from here to here, actually. Okay, but the elbow is now the point. The part of his anatomy that has accepted my center, or that has accepted me, has been this, but what he's grabbing is my arm. So I have to make sure that my center adjusts to what he has accepted as far as a grab. So in other words, this would be improper. I must keep my center to where the grip is. Now, the part of his body right now that is mainly accepted, I feel tension here on these two fingers in the middle knuckle. So this is where the center point is. My elbow represents the furthest extension. Now, as he pulls back, we're going to watch this slowly, but as he pulls back, what will happen is I must rotate to go with the center. By doing so, his adjustment, he has thrown himself to where my furthest point is, which is the elbow. So we'll do this again. If I'm here, and he's grabbed me out thusly, what I need to do is make my center here. As he pulls, I rotate that center slightly. So now what I want to do is go all the way to the accepted side here. So I'm using the octagon or this circular pattern to go as far as I can with this. Now, of course, the thing is, in order to do a throw or a striking type maneuver, what I need to do now is I need to close the door in. So here he still accepted this. He still grabbed. So what I do is I fold this in. Now if I fold that in and my objective is to throw him, I continue that door and I keep pushing in this direction. Thus the man goes down. So when you're dealing with this, if say he grabbed any place sensitive. Say if he grabbed here, the center, his center point is here. I must accept that center. Now in doing so, yes, I'm open with a punch, but if you notice how the octagon is moved, it is in this position. If I just step in the same alignment as the arm, I will avoid the punch. He's grabbed me here. His natural pull, he pulls me in. I go with this, I'm to the outside of that punch. This again creates a throw or a strike. If I wish to use a strike, say using the other hand. We'll do this again. He grabs here. Here's the point. As soon as a man grabs, turn the body to the direction which makes that line to center. Then visualize the furthest extension of your arm, or you have your cut going this way now. Now, as he pulls, if I angle this thusly, the hand, this changes direction of his throw or of his pulling movement. Now, if you've noticed what I've done now is I've guided him in a totally different direction. He's here now. At this point in time, he's loose. In other words, this man is almost airborne at this point. Now, if I take that same direction, let's move this out of the way. So what I'm doing now is I'm elevating this. So if he does this again, I move to center. Okay, then as a punch is thrown, I elevate the hand or the fan in this direction. This creates this movement. Now, say if I don't have the ability to step, then what I do is I rotate the lower part of the body. And I bring the toes in that direction and back out, or in other words, my feet. So what we're going to do now is get a small zoom close-up of the feet. So if I take my body and I position here and around, the man's going to go down as well. So you don't necessarily need to step. The elevation of the octagon not only comes from elevation of the hand, but also the hips, the knees, and everything else. No matter what a guy does. Now we're going to look at this again. This time let's take a two-hand wrist grab. Now at this point in time I can do almost anything I want. What I do is the acceptance, whatever side of the double hand grab that I want to be the accepted side, all I do is turn my center towards it. If I want the center to be here, this is all I've got to do. If I want the center to be here, this is all I have to do. Now if you notice here where we're using the fan, you see what takes place. If I put the fan in this hand and I move to the center here, see what this does. Now right away, this man would try to pull back and even out his center. So if I just rotate the fan again, here's a direction of movement that we take. You could either get a small cardboard dish or whatever and cut it out and practice these movements with it. Now the same thing takes place with a block. Point of contact is going to tell you how to initiate your upper, lower body to create your same effect. For instance, if the man punched and I block here and I bring the elbow here thusly, this gives me several alternatives as far as a strike. My counter with the left hand would shoot up to meet the same plane of movement. Therefore, the atemi is going to have maximum power or effectiveness, and I'm going to create damage to the lower back and also to the leg. So again, in your line of movement and motion, even with the atemi, it's the same thing. If my center is what he's seeking, and instead I point my center to, say, my elbow or to my wrist as he moves, here's what it is I accept in this point. This hand will draw back. If I turn the hand naturally with the first part of the atemi, or they hit here and strike in this direction, I have the same exact things that I had with the fan movement. So no matter how this man moves, if I stay, can you stay there, Sensei? If I have him here and I bring the fan down to my center, this is what's going to take place. If that was a hard strike or hard hit, I'm going to crush a man's spinal column. Now, to use it for throws, or the nage, is a good way to practice. It's a good way to practice because it gives you understanding how the body relates to your body. Now what we're going to do is try and get into more of the atemi. Watch. Okay, the direction that we use with a fan, we're going to start relating it to with how we're dealing with a punch as well. We'll start with this, so on a grab, the octagon is placed here. It's aligned with my center. If he pulls back, all I have to do is take the tip of the fan and touch the retracting side of his body, which again creates a situation of a throw. If he pulls down now, I continue the fan movement and I can place it here. Now this is what I'm accepting, so this is my motion here to create a throw. He readjusts again. As he pulls, I can bring the fan thusly. And again, see how it creates this with his own body. He pulls down, I create here, crease here, and then I fold it back out again, and I've got this. So basically what you're doing is you're maintaining one side of the octagon, and this is where the caging theory comes in. If he grabs, you visualize yourself as a center. This rotates, this rotates. As this rotates, your center point is what he's always hitting. You're either closing in, gapping, or maneuvering. Now, in setting up a basic waza or a technique, again, I'll show you this. If he's here, he's pulling that hand back. All I'm doing is doing this. What did I say about accepting the center? As he pulls back, that changes, you see? So my center has to change. Now what I do is I close the door of the fan, but I maintain my center. So here's a center motion or movement. If this was a shield going straight down, I'd be to this side of the body right now. If I did this at the same time, I extended my body thusly, and then I rotated this center out, I'm here now. If he let go, I'd be behind him. So a lot of grab techniques, if someone grabs and you wish to escape, visualize your body thusly. Turn to the center, okay, so I'm going to rotate to the center, and then bring yourself out, pull back away, and you're going to be behind a man. A lot of wrist grab releases. A lot of times you might release from the grip, but you open for hits. Instead, release from the grip, step to the center, and position yourself to be behind an opponent. Now, stay right there. This way also, if you notice how the body, his negative response to me is going to be rotating to hit. As he does so, look at the visual plane in which he's moving. Follow that as well. Use your fan again to create your throws or your strikes. I'm using the term fan, but anything with a hand. Visualize being able to be in control of power motion. If I have this here and the opponent's still coming towards me, always draw back to center. This positions you in this manner. Now here his motion is coming downward and up. Follow it back. This way you can create throws or do whatever else. Now, what we're going to do is if the guy, say for instance, grabs, what you want to do is as he pulls back, you just retrace to your center. Again, you're maintaining, unfortunately, you're doing the same thing. You're doing a 90. These laws and principles all have to work. So that elbow comes down, I follow that, and I come back and around. These are drills that you can do. My hand now is my fan. He pulls the hand down, I change the center and up. If I wish to throw, I just turn that center over, and down he'll go. Punching is the same thing. Punch. If I block here, yeah, I can block and I can counter, but I'm going to take a counter. Why? It's because I've left the octagon here. I'm still exposed to the center to be hit. In order to cause him to cross center, what I must do is I must turn that hip to have the octagon now focused here. Now, in this position or in this plane, any point that I wish to strike from is going to destroy the opponent. If I want to strike from number 7 of the octagon as a man moves, there's a counter of the hit. If you notice what's happened to his body mass, again, it condenses. If I wanted to take that same motion, strike, in this way, in this position, as he goes to hit again, take this thusly, his next motion, if I can continue it there, that's fine. So what I've done is I've taken it down here. What's down comes up. So what I do is I draw back to center, I go to that one point of the octagon. As he moves again, I've got a throw or a strike or a counter. So what you're doing is you're repositioning that octagon each time. Punch. If he's in this position, and I wish to hit, follow the angle in which he's striking. If I want to use a Uraken Kenzuke, I want to follow that same pattern of alignment that he's moving on. Therefore, when I hit, I do damage all the way down. A lot of systems of martial arts or Kempo, punch, will deal with throwing hand combinations to different sides of the body. However, they do not correspond with the way the body's moving. So, back again, punch. If I'm hitting here and he goes to hit, and I'm hitting here, I've got an exchange. I'm going to get hit. But if I follow that plane, my first strike is here. Whoops. His natural response on that is going to be turn and whip again. I use again the octagon to move. I follow this plane. I seek the center to hit or to strike. Damage is done then. So, no matter how a man moves, if he punches again and I move to this position, my octagon now, here's the center, it's to this portion or this side of the body. However, I have going from one position from the center, we have the octagon here, since we're projecting the strike outward, this way and also this way. I've encaged my opponent, so now I have two positions to strike from. To strike to this side of the body, I utilize this. To strike to the other side of the body, I utilize this. So your striking technique, what you've done now is encase your opponent. If you want to, like in two fans. Use either side, whatever side. This side is closer to the outer, and the direction is coming here. This is where the hits take place. This side of the body is closest here. So now I've placed that octagon here, and I have one here, and I have one here. This is our zigzag pattern. It is now being encompassed in between two shields. So if the man moves or punches, I'm in this position. The zigzag pattern is here. Point of impact, point of impact. Next position, rotation, point of impact. I'm going in between two angles. From here, I want to follow that pattern of movement. As he moves, point of impact, but it's to the weakest side of the body. From here, I use the lower feet in the same direction. Point of impact, sweep, take down. Technique. What you're doing now is not just using this shield, but we're using two shields, plus the zigzag pattern in between. Now, granted, this is going to take a while for the practitioner to start realizing. However, this is why martial arts is a discipline. This is something that you have to practice. You have to work. You got to remember this too. To disrupt the body, the body's systems, you have to disrupt the circle in which it exists. If someone is standing here, and we just utilize the individual like so, tip of the octagon, sides, zigzag pattern is here. You have all of your angles in your triangulation. This can also represent two shields. Now where I step and where I move and where my counters go are very important. The idea, if I want to disrupt the center, I've got to hit him at the 90, I've got to retract up and down the same angle to where I can create negative pressure. If I don't do this, I'm in trouble. If I don't do this, I end up hitting a man, energy is projected through. This we could utilize if we don't want to do permanent damage to an opponent. However, if he's punching and I'm doing this, and as he's moving I punch and counter, we have two people now meeting mass against mass. The opponent's striking, and I'm utilizing these centers. Now I've got two positions for moving. This is a shield, this is a shield. Zigzag in between. He moves. Every time I hit this man now, his strikes are totally centered. Right now he feels stress in between the neck, lower back, leg, and arm. I'm using the octagon again. Here's my fan. If I want to just break it down to the fan motion, I take that fan as he punches, I go with it. There's a throw or the strike. Bring the outer side of the octagon, which is engage the opponent, strike a counter. This is where the opponent ends up. I continue that movement now because I moved here. I've got the throw or the takedown. You have to remember that every single thing you do not get stuck with one thing in your head. You have to keep working. Now watch. Okay, I know that a lot of this is difficult, and it's going to be difficult unless you spend a lot of time with it. You got to remember that Koshuru, or the study of Kosho, is not just dealing with numerous techniques and movements. You have to understand purpose of everything that you do. You have to understand how one body movement relates to another. And also you got to remember that this is all about blending. Study the opponent as much as you study yourself when it comes to movement and motion. Now the thing is how would this relate to those of you that are not part of Kosho or that don't study Koshuru? Well, by watching this tape you will be studying it. But some hints on how you might better your technique, that if you're practicing from a technique base or waza. However, it is advised only to go through basics in this manner. After that I would do everything I could to discard many of the technique. However, first of all, when an opponent punches, don't just be concerned with the block at hand that you're blocking with. Be concerned how your opponent's moving. Just stand up, sensei. A lot of times, deal with how you relate to his body movement. You change your octagon with the basic relationship. If he's looking at me here, and as he moves to punch, as if you notice, what's happened, his body is turned. He's turned here. I'm still here. This is his focal point. But his hip has to rotate to hit. If you match that position with him, his punch cannot come in a straight line. It has to move circular. So what I've done now is I've encompassed both movements. Now, because he's done this is the same thing with the caging principle. I've encaged his movement. I can now strike to both the right side of the body and the left. Now, he's going to seek to hit me into the center again. Again, I've got two options. I can either continue along this plane, in which I can manipulate this part of the body, or as he rotates, I match him again with a rotation. So what you're doing is, in doing this, practice your technique first of all. When you deal with a technique or a punch, let's say you say that you're going to defend against a right punch, figure out on how the right punch is being thrown. And at the same time, learn to study it. Let's say if the opponent is going to throw a huge haymaker, and he cocks the hand way back. Well, the octagon now is, you're in this direction, but as a punch comes, learn to rotate to go with the thing. But learn to recognize that to begin with. If you wish to create an environment as a roundhouse punch comes, or move to the outside at the point where you've positioned yourself at the hip to where that hip can't come around and hit you. Because what's really hitting you, slow motion, roundhouse, what's really hitting you is this hip. This hip will line itself straight with your center. So if I just rotate myself slightly here, that roundhouse punch is going to miss, because the center is positioned here. Now, if I'm really worried about the roundhouse, my hip must be aligned with his foot. That gives me a wider circle. So as he starts to cock, I'm here now. I'm totally back position. Always go back to your center line. In that type of a position or movement, he's got to throw himself back into your center. So I'm doing a quick punch. If the opponent's punching, and I'm here in this position, he punches, your hits or strikes are right here. Everything's in position or movement is properly placed. Again, all rotation. He goes to punch, follow it, follow it. You can literally create an environment where this guy will break his own leg without you even touching him. This pivot point is going to be really messed up. Okay, so when you work your technique, watch how the guy throws a punch. Then watch how you're going to place your hands. And wherever you make your contact point with your opponent's arm or motion, find out how that changes his direction of the strike. An example, punch. If I'm here and I press thusly, this means this opponent is going to rebound in more of an upward fashion as he punches. So now, I not only want to follow him this way, but this should tell you the type of strike that you want to hit. You want to strike in an upward fashion. So if the man's moving in this direction, the hit maybe with a palm strike at that time is good. Palm strikes are very good strikes. However, if they're placed improperly, they can cause the wrist to be broken or the fingers. But understand that with the part of the body. Too many martial arts today do numerous techniques, but they don't take in consideration how the body's going to change with it. Thank you. Hope you enjoy the tape. As you study Kosho, please remember this, that the study has got to be a complete one for you to really understand things. When you study Kosho or any martial art, for example, make sure that you study all aspects of it. Kosho, we study Japanese calligraphy, we study massage therapy, we study the anatomy, we study history. All of these things, believe it or not, are very closely related to any martial movement that you do. History is going to tell you, again, about posture and game and positioning. I hope you enjoyed the tape. Thank you. This is the same thing with the caging principle. I've included this movement. I can now stand for both the right side of the body and the left. Now, he's going to seek to hit me in the center again. And again, I've got two options. I can either continue along this plane, in which I can manipulate this part of the body, or as he rotates, I match him again with a rotation. So what you're doing is, in doing this, practicing the technique. First of all, when you do the technique, let's say you say that you're going to defend